The Zatopek 10K, named after legendary Czech distance runner Emil Zatopek, is one of the most anticipated distance meets of the year. The meet attracts the best junior and open runners in Australia, creating world-class fields which would match any meet anywhere in the world. The meet serves as the Australian 10,000 metre championships, but also holds an historically fast 1500 metres and two under 23,000 metre races, the Ondaki 3,000 metres and the Castella under 23,000 metres. The meet has been run since 1961, which means legends such as Ron Clarke, Steve Moneghetti and Robert de Castella have won the race. The Zatopek 10 meet has had a very weird and strange history. I'll quickly go through some main points. So as I said, the meet was created in 1961. The meet was an idea of Percy Seriot, Les Perry and Bob Pretons, who met Zatopek at the 1952 Helsinki Olympics. Zatopek at those Olympics, if you didn't know, won the 5K, 10K and marathon in the same Olympics. Absolutely insane. The boys were all early office holders in the Victorian Marathons Club, VMC, which set up the Zatopek 10,000 metres as its club championships in 1961. This was as a result of the Nationals in 1955 in Adelaide, where they put the 6-mile run at 1 p.m. when it was 40 degrees Celsius. At the time, world record holder Dave Steffens refused to run and everyone else followed. So that means the race had a goal of making ideal conditions for quick times and enjoyable racing conditions. The race was also put onto the map after Ron Clarke in 1963 broke two world records in the same race. He broke the 6-mile and the 10,000 metre record in the same race at the 1963 Zatopek 10 meet. Ron Clarke has got the most victories at Zatopek with 5. Steve Moneghetti, Luke Kipkosgei, Andrew Lloyd and Shuey McSwain have all won the meet 3 times. The event definitely brought Australians back to the track after a very dominant road period between the 70s and early 2000s. Definitely helped with Craig Mottram and the likes really propulsing Australian track running into the limelight. The first distance race of the night was the Ondaki 3,000 metres. So this meet is named after Lisa Ondaki, who was the only Australian Olympic marathon medalist. This race has seen some very legendary runners such as Benita Willis, Eloise Wellings, Susie Power and the likes. This year's race was slightly weakened due to the COVID restrictions, same with most of the races, but we still had a very quality field. Abby Caldwell's definitely the favourite, Meg Dixon and Lucy O'Rourke also were in the field. The race started out very, very slow. They went through the first kilometre in 3:23, a lot slower than the class of the field and a lot slower than their PBs. However, through the 2K split, they ran 6:33, which meant they had dropped a 3:10K, and the field had withered down to 5. It was starting to really pick up, and then Abby Caldwell went boom. She dropped a 2:49 last K. I can repeat that, a 2:49 last K to win in a solid time of 9:22, and she dropped a 4:19 last 1500 metres as well, which is a solid 1500 metre time by itself, yet unknown in a 3000 metre. So very solid results, and I knew a lot of the girls in this race ran some PBs, so congratulations to everyone who competed. And now she has her name, Abby Caldwell, in a long list of very quality runners, some of the best runners Australia's ever seen in the Ondaki 3,000 metre. The next race we're going to talk about is the Castella 3,000 metres. So this is named after the Australian marathon record holder Robert de Castella. The race likewise has had some many legendary Australian distance runners in it, including the likes of Ryan Gregson, Brett Robinson, Craig Mottram and Matthew Ramsden. Key players in this race were Sam Clifford, Matthew Hussey, Adam Goddard, Adam Spencer and Drew Fryer. The race likewise started very slow. They went through the K in 3:01, 9:03 K pace, very slow. But then Aidan Roberts, who recently ran a 3:47 1500 metres, shot to the front and started dropping 65, 66 second laps. They went through 1500 and 4:21, 4:22, so a very quick pace was starting to go. They went through 2K in 5:45, so you can do the maths on that. That was a very, very quick second K, bringing them very close to being in that all-time record list. With about 600 meters to go, Samuel Clifford, who's run a 14:09 5,000 meters. He's the under 18 or under 20 5,000 meter record holder for Australia. Shot to the front, but he kind of got boxed in with about 300 meters to go, and Adam Spencer just took off. He really pushed that last 200. Drew Fryer really tried to come back at him, but Adam Spencer was too strong, winning in 8:17. Spencer now has his name amongst some of the best ever runners in Australia in the Castella 3,000 meter. Now onto one of the biggest events of the year so far, the Zatopek 10 for the males. So this year's Zatopek saw a quality field including Olympians Brett Robinson, Sam McEntee and David McNeil, and Olympic marathon qualifier Jack Rayner. There was also youngsters Kieran Tall and Ed Goddard, who were both in really good form. Also Tom DeCanto, who was also in very good form. He recently ran a 62-minute half marathon in Launceston. It was a bit disappointing to see no Stewie McSwain or Pat Tiernan, who are the second and first on the all-time list for Australian 10,000 meter runners. But it was good to see that Ben Buckingham, a world champ steepler, was in charge of pacing. He's a quality athlete, and he was definitely, right in his element, pacing 14 minutes through 5,000 meters. The first 5K went as expected. Everyone who you would think would be in the front group was in the front group. Shout out to Ed Goddard and Kieran Tall, who practically ran 5,000 meter PBs through 5K, which is very ballsy at a national championships and on a hot and windy day at Box Hill. At pretty much literally straight after, at 5 to 6K, Brett Robinson dropped the hammer. He dropped a 2:44K to pretty much obliterate that front group. It went from a group of about 8 to 9 to 1, just Brett Robinson. Behind him about 10 to 15 meters was Jack Rayner, and behind him was Ed Goddard and David McNeil working together very nicely. Over the next 4K, Brett pretty much solo ran it in. He was really dropped the pace down, but then he kind of slowed up a bit. It wasn't too dramatic that he didn't lose his lead, but everyone was kind of slowing down. Jack Rayner wasn't gaining any ground, and Brett Robinson wasn't losing any. And so he finished in 28 minutes flat, so he just couldn't dip under 28 minutes. His PB is 27:58 from 2019 in Europe. So he just missed his PB, but he is now the national champion and has his name on the long list of legends who have won the Zatopek 10K meet. Jack Rayner was a convincing second in 28:13, and David McNeil was third in 28:16, but had a huge last lap to beat Ed Goddard, who was in fourth in 28:23. There was some blow-ups, there was some huge PBs. Ed Goddard and Kieran Tall were both runners who had huge PBs, and we are lucky enough now to hear from them, so...
Oh, morning brother. Welcome to Matt's YouTube channel. So, for those of you who don't know, my name's Kieran Tall. I'm part of Run Crew, coached by Benny Saint. I'm from Sydney. And I'm also part of a group called Swim Club Track Club, which is basically a group of up-and-coming Sydney under-23s, juniors, just good runners, good blokes, good non-blokes, whatever you want to call us. I've represented Australia at the World Cross Champs at World Juniors, and I run 28:47 for 10K, so let's get into it. Firstly, a special shout out to my boy Luke the Bike McCutcheon. He is a fit man, he's got a bat on his ankle, and as a matter of fact, so does Adam Fogg. So I just come home from racing Zatopek, which is what we're here to talk about. And look, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a rundown of what's been going on. As I am from the northern beaches of Sydney, as I mentioned, I have had to go to quite the effort to get to Zatopek. So went to regional New South Wales for 2 weeks and then crossed the border and then spent a week in Melbourne and then raced Zatopek. So look, it's part of being a runner. I think it was worth it and it was quite enjoyable getting there as much as it was challenging. Bit of another shout out to my boy Johnny Guzman, who actually came with me most of the way. We were both trying to get into Victoria for many weeks, and we finally managed it after about 2.5 weeks. So had a pretty good lead up. It was not quite what I wanted, but I did tick off quite a few good sessions, including some K-reps at altitude, some thresholds, and some 2-hour long runs, which is all staples in 10K training. I would have liked a little more consistency and a few more months of training, and it was a lot of moving around, but in saying that, I think I did have a decent lead up. So look, at the end of the day, part of being a lead athlete is adapting, and I think I did that as best as I could. To give you a rundown, I spent a bit of time in Oberon, which is in regional New South Wales near the Blue Mountains, and then I went through Goulburn to Jindabyne, and then finally on to Melbourne after my little quarantine after my COVID test. To talk about Zatopek, it went out quicker than I thought and probably quicker than I was ready for. But it was a really good experience, and considering the time I ran on the night, I'm happy. I ran through 5K in about 13:59 to 14 minutes, which is 28-minute pace. And yes, I did blow up, but considering I blew up and still ran 29 flat, it's not a bad day. It wasn't the PB I was after, but in saying that, if I had ran through in 14:15, probably would have run 28:30. So I think I am in good shape and I've had some good training. I just need to keep being patient and get ready for my next race, which is actually the state 5K champs this Saturday. So that should be good. We're going to shoot for a sub 13:55, I would like to say. And I think, look, we're getting there. I've done a few weeks over 100 miles recently, which is a first. And yeah, that's about it at the moment. So we're going to have a crack at a few 5Ks, maybe a 1500. And I've heard through the grapevine that I may be going up to Brisbane at some point to join both Matt and the Fog Dog if he is still here, and Luke the Bike McCutcheon, Perk Daddy, Brack Daddy, and whoever else decides to come for a run. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, Strava, Snapchat, any other social media that I may have, Matt will drop it in the comments below. And one more thing. If you want me to get a bat tattoo, comment down below. Thanks, guys.
The next race of the night was the 1500 metres for the women. So the standout in the field was Lynden Hall. She is a 2016 Olympian in the 1500 and has run 4 flat and is ranked number 2 all time on the Australian 1500 metre women's list. Kat Bissett, who won the 800 previously in the night in 2:02 and is the Australian 800 metre record holder, was pacing her for about 2:08 to 2:10 through 800, and she was also in a field with Keely Small, who is a Commonwealth Games representative in the 800 metres, and Jenny Blundell, who was with her at the 2016 Rio Olympics in the 1500 metres, who was just recently finding a bit of form again. The race started out very fast, and the girls definitely separated themselves from the other women in the field. They went through the first 464, so on for 4-minute pace, and they went through 800 and 210, so Kat Bissett did a brilliant job pacing them, especially as they were going for the Olympic qualifier, which is 4:04.2. After that, they were solo, and Lynden Hall lengthened her stride. She dropped the 62-second last lap to just narrowly miss the Olympic qualifier. She ran 4:04.33, which is 0.13 seconds off the Olympic qualifier. That's literally just a dip at the line, but I'm sure she'll get it. She's got plenty more opportunities, especially if she goes over to Europe. For a domestic race, that is such a good time, especially early on in the season. The next event was the 1500 metres for the men. A very quality field was also assembled. Ryan Gregson and Geordie Williams were the headliners, but runners like Callum Davies, Jared Clifford, Isaac Hayne and Matty Clark were definitely not going to make it easy for Gregor and Geordie to win. Peter Ball was also a bit of a dark horse. He's Australia's second fastest ever 800 metre runner. They wanted 157 through 800, however it was actually quite slow. They went through 800 about 159 to 2 minutes, which was a bit off the intended pace. Geordie took up the lead with 600 metres to go, something he doesn't do very often. He usually just sits and kick. Most of the field followed him. Most of the field was still together due to the slower pace. They went through the bell in 2:44, and most of the field had dropped off at this point, so it led only Boll, Geordie Williams, Callum Davies, and Ryan Gregson. It was actually really good to see. Geordie Williams must be very strong right now. He held the lead the whole last 400 meters, really starting to kick it down with 2:50 to go. With 100 meters to go, it looks like Ryan Gregson was going to come around him and overtake him, but Geordie found an extra gear to win the race in 3:39. Ryan Gregson was super close. He just broke 3:40 in 3:39 high. Callum Davies also had a very big breakout run. He ran a PB of 3:40 high. And big shout out to Jared Clifford for breaking his para world record yet again, running 3:42 high. The last event of the night was the Zatopek 10K for the women. It was great to see a women's event being the last event of the night, especially given how good this field was. The fastest runner in the field was Ellie Pashley. She had run 31:18 at the Doha World Champs in 2019. However, she wasn't quite in the same form as she was back then. She is revving up for the Tokyo Olympic Marathon later in the year. We also had Olympian Jen Gregson, Sinead Diver as well, who has run a 2:25 marathon and also finished just behind Ellie Pashley at the World Championships in Doha as well. We had Lauren Ryan, who recently ran 8:54 3,000 meters. We had Rose Davies, who came third in Zatopek in 2019. And we had Andrea Sekafine, who ran a 69-minute half marathon in Japan last year, but she is not Australian, so she doesn't count towards the Australian Championship. And we also finally have Izzy Bat-Doyle, who ran a 15:25 5K last year and came third at NCAA 10K in 2019. We also had Sarah Billings and Nat Rule pacing. They were trying to pace for the 31:25 Olympic qualifier. It's a very, very tough qualifier, and it was very apparent early on in the race that it was going to take a lot from the athletes to try and get this Olympic qualifier. It became apparent early as well that they probably were not going to get the Olympic qualifier. However, it was still going to be a quick race. They were paced to 5K in about 15:50. Sorry, the pacer actually dropped off about 4.6K, which meant Jen Gregson, who was sitting in second, took the lead. It looked like MTC and Nick Badori's group were working together. All the athletes who trained with him were working together to keep the pace up. They had dropped. They were supposed to be running around 3:08s, 3:09s, and they were running more like 3:12s, 3:13s. Still very, very quick pace, but not quite what they needed for that Olympic qualifier. As I said, they went through in 5K in 15:50, which is 10 seconds off the pace needed. Anyway, there was kind of lots of cat and mouse. Different people went to the front and paced a lap or two, and then came and sat back. But something that became apparent was Rose Davies and Izzy Bat-Doyle were not taking charge at all. They were just sitting back, relaxing, trying to just see the lap counter tick down. They did not want to lead at all. It was actually really, really interesting to see. At about 7K, we saw Sinead Diver go from second in the group all the way out the back, and then she got spat out. She almost took Lauren Ryan with her, who got a bit mixed up when they were passing some lapped runners. But she ended up coming back on, but Sinead Diver was off the back now. She was not going to be the Zatopek 10 winner for 2021. Lauren Ryan did come back eventually for a few laps, but then at about 7.5K, she was gone for good. Andrea Sekafine went to the front and started dropping the hammer a bit. That left only 4 runners left. We had Andrea Sekafine, Jen Gregson, Izzy Bat-Doyle, and Rose Davies left. At 8.2K, Andrea dropped the hammer yet again. Jen instantly dropped off the back. She was definitely finding the pace too hot to handle, and Izzy and Rose made moves to stick with the pace. That means that Izzy and Rose are at least going to be 1 on 2 in the Australian Championships. With about a mile to go, Izzy Bat-Doyle took the lead and really started pushing the pace. Andrea almost looked like she was dropping off, but she just kept that attachment that you can feel when you're running, And Rose Davies yet again just sat back, didn't do any work, just sat right on the shoulder of Izzy Bat-Doyle, letting her know that she was still there. With 800 meters to go, Andrea was not done yet. She came back around Izzy Bat-Doyle, who was in the lead at the time, and started pushing the pace until 600 meters to go, where Izzy Bat-Doyle took the pace yet again and started running even quicker. Andrea looked like she was done, but Rose Davies was still with her. With a lap to go, the gap started getting bigger between Izzy Bat-Doyle, Rose Davies, and also Andrea Sekafine. She was off the back. She was not going to be winning this race. With 200 meters to go, Izzy was still in the lead. She was looking good, but then Rose Davies went on the inside of Izzy Bat-Doyle and dropped an absolute huge kick. With 200 meters to go, she ended up dropping at least 4 or 5 seconds on Izzy Bat-Doyle in the last 200 meters. An absolutely insane kick. She looked super strong. The arms were pumping. And at 21 years old, Rose Davies won Zatopek 10 in a time of 31:39. She dropped the 66-second last lap to beat Izzy Bat-Doyle, who ran 31:43. Both breakout runs for these two runners who were definitely not expected to run as well as they did. Andrea Sekafine was third in the race, but because she's an Australian, she didn't count for the Australian Championship. She ran 31:45. And the third place in the Australian Championship was Jen Gregson, who held on decently well for 32:06. And what an incredible run by Rose Davies. I was not expecting that. If you put your money on Rose Davies, you would have made a heck of a return. But I don't think, looking at the core of that field, you would think that the 21-year-old would win that race.